This is Breakfast on a Thursday morning, the day after, obviously, the presidential race, Barack Obama winning, as we now all know. I would say at this point that Donald Trump and I do share the same political views, but that doesn't stop him from being a twat. So, re-elected as President Barack Obama, the first US president ever to be re-elected with a smaller number of electoral votes. The first US president ever to be re-elected with unemployment above 7%. So why? How were Americans able to overlook the fact that the economy is doing so badly comparatively? How were they able to overlook unemployment? How were they able to overlook broken promises? Dr. David Smith, US politics and foreign policy lecturer at Sydney University's US Studies Centre, joins me now. David, good to talk to you again.
Great to talk to you.
How were they able to overlook all of these things? Is it that they just didn't like Romney?
Well, actually, the last president who got re-elected in circumstances this bad was Franklin Roosevelt. And like Franklin Roosevelt, Obama was presiding over an economy which people knew was so bad and was not a creation of that president, that there was a lot of blame to go around. So yes, people blame Obama for the state of the economy, but more people still blame George W. Bush. Even more people than that blame both houses of Congress, and even more people than that blame Wall Street bankers.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because people were able, with so many previous presidents who've been shamed, George W. Bush is an example, he shouldered blame personally, whereas Obama really hasn't shouldered it personally, and obviously this is what you're saying. People accept that there are greater problems that were out of his control.
Yes, and unfortunately, Mitt Romney, because of his Wall Street background, actually became seen as a symbol of the class of people who had led the United States into those circumstances in the first place. And even though Mitt Romney wasn't personally responsible for all of this, this was something that he could never escape. This was something the Democrats were hammering him on from January of this year when they realised that he was going to be the candidate, especially in swing states.
He did fabulously well, didn't he? If you look at the beginning of the campaign where he made so many gaffes, he was just being himself, and himself was disadvantageous. He still almost won it. I mean, it was spectacularly close.
He got within striking distance, and he got within striking distance in that first debate by being a reasonable moderate who reminded people of what the Republican Party used to sound like, as opposed to what they've been hearing for the last 4 years with the Tea Party. That's how he got so close. He actually managed to shed the baggage of the Republican Party to put himself within striking distance.
You know, people would look at those electoral votes, the electoral vote count, and they would say, oh, it wasn't really that close. Obama won it easily. But in reality, it would be very hard to get closer without actually winning.
Well, he could have got a little bit closer. I mean, Barack Obama built what was referred to as the firewall of safe states. And Mitt Romney only took back 2 of the states.
But came very, very close in those others. Like Florida was interesting. I thought he was so close.
Yeah, Florida was... And watching Florida yesterday, you might have felt the same thing. I was thinking, thank God Florida is not going to decide this election again. I mean, I don't know what it is about that place and razor-thin
they don't know their own mind.
Margins. But in a lot of places, there was a 3 or 4% difference. There's probably a 1 to 2% difference in the popular vote. Americans have actually come to expect in some ways that their society is so closely divided politically that that's the kind of margins that they are used to politically. And I was glad that this win was clear enough that the Republicans accepted defeat, that they're not talking about, well, maybe it was voter fraud.
They accepted absolute defeat.
That's right. They're not saying that it was Hurricane Sandy that changed it. They do accept that they were beaten.
David, can I ask you a quick question, but it's a major question. Are essentially the Republicans doomed? Is demographics working against them? And I was looking at Nevada. Now, they thought they could win Nevada. You look at the growth in the Latino vote there. Now, the Latino vote went 71% to Obama. I thought it would have gone higher than that, but 71%. With that, with the demographics changing in the states, isn't it just going to get harder and harder and harder for the Republicans to get in?
Well, the Republicans don't have to be doomed because Latinos are not wedded to the Democratic Party. It's only been because of the last 4 years of anti-immigrant rhetoric that they're voting that way. George W. Bush was getting 45% of Latinos. Latinos often tend to be socially conservative.
That was a big mistake policy, wasn't it? Big mistake policy on the Latinos, on migration.
Massive mistake, and I would expect that the Republican Party might take a softer line in the next 4 years. With women, they haven't lost women, they just need to stop being the party that trivialises rape.
Absolutely, and to be fair, the differences between women and men, they were not staggering. They were not unsurmountable anyway. The other just very quick thing, Obama did very well out of the support of the motor industry. I think that
incredibly
paid big
well
dividends.
in the Midwest.
Yeah.
That from the very beginning was going to be impossible for Romney to
It's been fantastic, your analysis, David. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Dr. David Smith.